This is why NASA stopped exploring the oceans, and it's terrifying. NASA first began exploring the deep sea in 1958, but completely stopped in 2014 for some unknown reason. They then started putting all of their efforts towards space exploration and trying to get us off this planet. People obviously began wondering as to why they made the sudden change, but no one had any clue. Well, that was until just a few days ago when a head engineer at NASA was fired and he decided to speak out about this. The man stated that despite the popular belief that only 5% of our ocean is explored, NASA in reality had 68% of our ocean mapped out. But this is when they stumbled upon something unusual. They have found an enormous cave opening near a region of Hawaii which they have never seen before. The cave eventually led them to a ravine that was completely submerged underwater, and it was nearly 50% deeper than the Mariana Trench. NASA then developed submarines that were capable of submerging that deep, and they made their way down. On their way down, they started seeing many strange creatures which exist nowhere else on Earth. Just 30 minutes later, this is when they saw yet another massive cave. When the submarine pointed its flashlights inside the cave, a massive eye was staring directly into their souls. It was the size of a house, as the scientists stated, and they were all horrified. They immediately went back to the surface in fear. The engineer also shared some photos of this encounter. If you want to see it, comment view images.
So this is a bit scary. So you know NASA, right? Everyone knows NASA. So they started exploring the ocean in 1958, right? 1958. They started exploring the ocean. Guess what? They stopped exploring in 1958 too. They must have found something like scary that stopped them from continuing. They instantly started looking into space and tried to find a way to get off this planet. I mean, is it really a coincidence that the quote unquote moon landing was just a decade after? And you know that they also allegedly detonated a huge bomb in the ocean in 2021, and you know that we've only explored 5%. We've only explored 5% of our oceans. Isn't that crazy? It makes you wonder what on earth did they find that they were so afraid of? Could it have been a megalodon, a kraken, even a cetus? Or some theories even say it could be a leviathan or Charybdis.
They can't put rockets in space. It is blocked by the firmament. The firmament mentioned in Genesis separates the waters above from the waters below. There's a firmament, an impenetrable barrier. And most Christians don't even believe in the firmament. Most of them don't and then I come out and say, hey, I know what the firmament is. It's in the shape of a rainbow. In fact, that's how rainbows are formed. How do you get curved light that makes a rainbow? It has to be mirroring something that's curved exactly the same as it, the same angulation.
Like water too, right?
Exactly. If you're a Christian, you're going to have to pick. Do you believe NASA or do you believe the Bible? Because here it is in the Bible. God made the sun and the moon and the stars. 3 different words, 3 different things, differentiated on purpose. The Bible does not waste a word. The Bible's not like me. It don't just ramble senselessly and have to be told to shut up. The Bible says everything that needs to be said and not nothing more. It differentiated the sun and the moon and the stars on the first page of the book. What does NASA tell you? The sun is a star, and the stars are the sun. NASA says that the sun are stars, and that they're off in the distance. I'm telling you, NASA's full of shit. The sun don't twinkle. Guess what don't twinkle? The sun. What does NASA teach, though? The sun is stars. They're the same thing. They're just further away. No, the sun and the stars are different. The sun will never twinkle. It is not a star. It's a great light to rule the day. I don't even think it's running off of helium, hydrogen, things like. I think it's damn near supernatural great light.
They did fake the moon landing. That's a fact, whether people realize it or not. Today, with 54-year better rocket designs and computer designs, the farthest that NASA can send a rocket with an astronaut into space is 1,000th the distance to the moon. That's why they're sending mannequins to orbit the moon that can't even land because they would die from the radiation. Most people don't know, which is above the Earth, starting at about 1,000 miles and extending about 30,000 miles, is a huge band of radiation that astronauts would have to go through to the moon and through again back. The technology for an astronaut to go through it to the moon and back and survive has yet to be invented. They had 1/8 of an inch of aluminum. Now, when you get a dental x-ray, they use 1/4 inch lead. And so that's for 1/24 of a second. They would be in that for an hour to an hour and a half going to the moon and an hour to an hour and a half coming back.
NASA doesn't want you to know they have the last dinosaur. A guy named Lucas Meyer, who loves hiking, discovered this on a Texas trail in February. In the 1980s, NASA built facilities across the U.S. including one near the Window Trail in Texas. It was supposed to be an observatory, but Lucas found something strange. While wandering off the trail, he found a small hill with a view. Standing on a metal plate, he uncovered a hatch that said something like, "Zone C property of NASA, stay out." Lucas opened it, revealing a 100-foot ladder. His curiosity led him down a cold tunnel to a locked door labeled Carnivore Habitat Restricted Personnel Only. Being a skilled locksmith, he opened it. Behind the door was a huge room with a walkway 100 feet above trees. Suddenly, he heard rustling below. To his shock, a dinosaur emerged from the leaves. Panicking, he fled. 2 weeks later, he tried to find the hatch but couldn't. No one believed him at this point. Then he realized he was wearing a GoPro. Yesterday, the footage got leaked. So if you want to see it, follow me, click here on more, and then photos, or type dinosaur in all caps.
Does anyone actually still watch the moon landing footage and think it's real?
Houston, we've had a problem. Main B bus undervolt. Roger, main B undervolt. Stand by 13, we're looking at it. Okay, right now, Houston, the voltage is looking good.
Whole hurricane. So can you see hurricanes from space? Yes, you can. In fact, as we've been talking up here, you can see the whole hurricane, and that's pretty neat to be able to see it. You can see the eye and how it's forming. But one of the things that's interesting about up here, when you see that whole hurricane, you're pretty amazed and you start taking pictures and all of that of it, but then you forget, you're pretty amazed and you start taking pictures and all of that of it, but then you forget that.
Yeah, you forget that you're actually not.
Let's look at the photo. You say that's me? Okay, check out the name badge. It says Aldrin. Looks like you're right. But notice the helmet. Can you see my face? No. This is a secret I've been keeping for almost half a century. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and I pulled off humanity's first extraterrestrial prank.
What was the scariest moment of the journey?
Scariest? It didn't happen. It could have been scary.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going. Money is a good thing. If you want to buy new things, new rockets, instead of keep doing the same thing over, well, then it's going to cost more money. And other things need more money too. So having achieved what the president wanted us to do, and then what thousands, millions of people in America, and millions of people around the world. You know, when we toured around the world after we came back, the most fascinating observation was signs that said, we did it. Not just us, not just America, but we, the world, different countries. They felt like they were part of what we were able to do. And that made us feel very good.
This has been all over TikTok about how NASA may have found and accidentally killed life on Mars 50 years ago. Here's what happened. In 1976, two of NASA's crafts, Viking 1 and 2, successfully landed on Mars. This was the United States' first landing on the surface, beaten out by the Soviet Union, who reached it 5 years earlier. The mission was to take photos of the surface and collect samples. According to NASA, the results at the time were confusing. They didn't fully comprehend the chemical activity in the soil, which kind of makes sense because because this was their first time seeing it. But ultimately, they decided whatever they were looking at wasn't life. Now, one astrobiologist has published this article saying, let's take another look at those Viking samples. Hoorah. Because here's how the testing on Mars worked. The landers took a scoop of the soil, put it in a container, and added water. The water had nutrients and radioactive carbon because the idea was that if there was life in there, it should metabolize the nutrients and emit a gas that could be detected by the landers. This astrobiologist is saying, Mars is dry. If life evolved here, it would probably drown from that much water. The tests may have been flawed from the beginning. He did not say that we discovered life on Mars. What he's saying is that we should take another look at the samples, since we've learned so much about Mars since the 1970s, and dedicate a future mission to the singular purpose of searching for life by using various techniques to test for it.
Terrifying things said by astronauts. One of the most mysterious aspects of the moon landing is Neil Armstrong's first words when he stepped on the lunar surface. Most of us were taught that his famous quote was, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." However, NASA has disclosed that there was a 2-minute transmission loss just before Armstrong's famous words were spoken. During this lost transmission, Armstrong reportedly made an unsettling statement to NASA. Multiple sources have confirmed he said, "These babies are huge, sir. Enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us." This statement was never heard by the public as the transmission was cut off for 2 minutes and Armstrong never mentioned it again.
NASA just locked 4 volunteers in a 1,700 square foot habitat that simulates Mars, and they're going to be in there for the next 378 days. Sunday, June 25th marked the start of Mission 1 of NASA's Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, aka CHAPEA. The participants, which include a research scientist, a structural engineer, an emergency medicine physician, and a microbiologist, were selected from a pool of applicants to be a part of the first of 3 simulated Mars missions, each a year long. The crew members will live and work in the simulated Mars habitat at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Throughout their stay, the group will participate in crop growth, simulated spacewalks, habitat maintenance, and science experiments. They will also face a range of challenges and environmental stressors to simulate a real-life human mission. NASA says the goal of the mission is to, quote, assess human health and performance in relation to Mars-relevant resource limitations in isolation and confinement.
The NASA knows where the Leviathan is and doesn't want you to know. NASA used to be a marine exploration organization from the late 1950s to the early 1970s. However, at the end of June, many confidential files were leaked by a former NASA employee, the most notable being Operation Leviathan. In 1967, NASA launched a mission to find the Leviathan once and for all. On March 1st of that year, they launched a specialized fleet of 11 research vessels, and for more than a year, these ships scoured the oceans for signs of the Leviathan. On August 12, 1968, they found something astonishing in a remote part of the Pacific Ocean near the Mariana Trench. Their sonar equipment detected what appeared to be a kind of enormous underwater serpent, living thousands of feet below the surface and measuring more than 300 feet in length. This information was kept secret for decades but was testified under oath before the jury, so lying would be a crime. But the most shocking thing is that photos and videos were revealed. If you want to see them, click on this icon, select more, and comment Leviathan photos.
Actually, it's a link along that tether line you see there, 25 feet of umbilical cord. That It contains the life support system and communications link from the spacecraft life support system out through that chest pack.